Shabbat Shalom. On Tuesday, along with Rabbi Ehrlich, I traveled downtown to the Nova exhibition entitled October 7th, 6:29 a.m., The Moment the Music Stood Still. The name reflects the time when Hamas terrorists infiltrated the area and the ensuing bloodbath began. The exhibition is located in a cavernous warehouse on Wall Street, and it recreates in astonishing detail the campgrounds and stages of the Nova Music Festival. Nova was billed as a celebration of life, peace, and music. Upon entering the installation, the first station pays homage to this sublime piece of Nova's identity, showing a gorgeous video of the Nova revelers dancing in the hours before the attack. They are jumping and laughing, singing and smiling, broad, beautiful smiles. Happiness overflows from one person to another, and the dance floor just bursts with love and light and energy. But at 6:29, with the sight of the first rockets above and the sound of the first red alert, everything changed. As our dreamlike video ends, the exhibit begins in earnest as visitors are ushered into the next set of rooms, which have been arranged to look and feel like the campsite on the Nova grounds. Down to the trees lining the pathways, the sand covering the floor, and the incense burning in the air. Tents, chairs, and sleeping bags left in haste on the ground fill much of the space, as does an array of personal effects. An open book here, a sweatshirt there, a sock, a guitar, a stuffed animal. All remnants of a scene that by all accounts was so joyful and so mellow just moments before. The campgrounds are also dotted with multiple video screens, each showing a single video on loop. Many of these videos are from survivors sharing what they witnessed and endured on that Black Sabbath. Others are from Zaka workers or soldiers or civilians who took it upon themselves to enter the fray on that fateful day. Rami Davidson is one such civilian who led a rescue effort that saved hundreds on October 7th. But Rami's video is heart-wrenching, because on that day, he came face to face with countless victims who had suffered unspeakable acts of sexual violence. He said through tears, "The sights I saw will forever be ingrained in my mind till the end of time." Some of the videos on loop come from Hamas body cameras. There is astonishing footage of Hamas fighters getting ready for battle, and equally astonishing footage of them breaking down the barrier fence and literally pouring into Israel. Another shows a Hamas fighter spraying the Nova bathrooms with an indiscriminate amount of bullets, with the viewer never knowing if anyone was ever on the other side. The exhibit also includes two of the most disturbing and now familiar videos to many of us in our world. The excruciating moment when Noah Argamani is being kidnapped to Gaza, and the video of Shani Luke, may her memory forever be a blessing, being paraded through Gaza on the back of a pickup truck. These are the scenes that were knowingly and at times gleefully recorded by Hamas on October 7th. Intermixed with the Hamas videos are those filmed by festival goers themselves. Many are forever memorialized on the cell phones they left at the Nova site. These phones, which have now been recovered, are everywhere they might be if the festival were actually happening. In a tent, under a blanket, on a camp chair, or in the dirt. And so as visitors move through the installation, they are encouraged to pick up the phones and watch the videos or listen to the conversations recorded there. One such conversation is between a young woman and her father. He is trying to assess the situation and guide her towards safety. But at a certain point, the daughter stops answering the text. And all one can do is stare at the background photo on the phone, which is a picture of this girl and her father. Another video is of a woman recording herself as she hides in the brush from Hamas fighters. She says she wanted a video to memorialize this moment, just in case. A handful of videos simply show people running for their lives, for their loved ones, for the hope of living one more minute or hour or day. These agonizing videos play throughout the exhibit, and the effect is truly harrowing. And yet these videos were filmed as testimony, sacred testimony to a moment so barbaric and so sinister that these souls felt the need to capture it on film so that others might begin to understand the scale of this atrocity. The truth is, it's hard to understand the scale even now. But the tangible artifacts recovered from the Nova site itself remind us just how vicious this attack really was. Take, for example, the portable bathrooms, some of which have been transported to the exhibit. As I referenced earlier, they are riddled with bullet holes, shot at not in defense, but rather for savage sport. And what about the masses upon masses of burned out cars that were found at Nova, a few of which were brought to this exhibition? Singed and scorched, they are now but hollowed out frames, charred very likely by high-powered RPGs, which are weapons of war. These cars belonged to young revelers and psytrance enthusiasts and families, people who came to Nova not to wage war, but to dance in love and in peace. Looking at the sea of objects left behind at the exhibit's Lost and Found, it's so clear that war was the last thing on the Nova community's mind. The tables are full, not of weapons or military gear, but festival gear. Airy clothing, bandanas, headbands, toys, trinkets, hats, glasses, and so many quirky and sweet novelty items. I found myself lingering over a couple such items. A bucket hat decorated with characters from Sesame Street, and a coloring book entitled Chayot Bar, or wild animals. Thinking about the people who wore and used these items just tore my heart in two. But the most striking table at the lost and found section is the one covered in shoes. Shoes of all shapes and sizes, some big and some shockingly small. Shoes which are stacked in piles, eerily evocative of scenes from the Holocaust. So many were forced to flee without their shoes. What happened to the person who owned those sparkly boots? What about the Adidas slide or that black Converse high top? Every shoe and every item salvaged has its own story to tell. But the question that haunts me still is, how do these stories end? The story of the Nova Festival is nowhere near its end. In fact, it is only just beginning. A curious passage in this week's Torah portion, which we heard a little bit about earlier, sheds light on this notion. We begin our portion called Behar with the phrase, God spoke to Moses Behar Sinai, on Mount Sinai. The trouble with this verse is that God spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai portions and portions ago. So why is Sinai mentioned here? Well, says the medieval commentator Ibn Ezra, there is no chronology in the Torah. The Torah, just like life, doesn't unfold linearly. What happened years ago often feels like it happened just yesterday. And this is certainly the case with Nova. Walking into that exhibit, it is clear that for those who experienced this trauma, it is still October 7th. It doesn't matter that 7.5 months have passed. It is still October 7th, and the agony of that day remains ever present, pulsing in the souls of all who lived through this horror. The grief is unfathomable. The pain is immeasurable. The desolation often unbearable, especially in a world where false narratives about October 7th and the Nova Festival itself abound. But the victims of Nova cannot, nor should not carry their story alone. They cannot be solely responsible for both grieving and also proving the circumstances of their grief. And so they need us, all of us, to bear witness to their suffering, to bear witness to the truth of what happened at Nova on that day, and to bear witness to the brutality and ruthlessness with which this massacre was carried out. The Nova angels and survivors and family members and friends, they need our voices, they need our presence, they need our support as the world grows less and less willing to hear them and less understanding of their pain. Standing in the exhibit's exquisite memorial room, surrounded by the luminous faces of those who were murdered on October 7th, one could easily fall into the depths of despair over the injustice of it all, over the 370 murdered and the 44 who were taken hostage from the festival. But everywhere you look, and under most every picture you see, there are tributes full of light and love and peace and kindness. The people who died at Nova stood for all of these ideals. They believed in the power of love. They believed in the strength of friendship, even across borders and boundaries. And they believed in the promise of peace. As we bear witness to the horrors of Nova, let us also bear witness to the beauty of Nova and the hopefulness of this deeply loving and accepting community. In truth, we honor their memories best when we honor their dreams. The Nova community is one defined by love, compassion, and perhaps most powerfully, resilience. And when guests leave the exhibit, this remarkable resilience is on full display in the form of a sign that proudly and defiantly says, "We will dance again." This is the refrain offered by those who survived the Nova massacre, and it has become a psalm of hope and strength and resistance. It means, even in the wake of our horrendous tragedy, even in the face of our most tragic loss since the Holocaust, and even in the deepest valleys of our pain, we will lift ourselves up. We will hold ourselves high, and we will dance again, guided by the soaring light of those now dancing in the heavenly spheres above us. May the memories of all who died at Nova and throughout Israel on October 7th be bound up in the bonds of life forever, and may their spirits dance within our hearts today, tomorrow, and always. Amen.